Hello everyone, welcome back to Mr. News Art Class. It's wonderful to see all your smiling faces today. Today we're going to be learning in time-lapse mode how to make all 12 of the patterns you see here in front of you. This is the basic shape you'll need for the first pattern. It's simply two parallel lines to make a stem, and those should be curved lines, with a little bit of a curve at the end that overlaps both, and then a big circle wrapping around the end of the stem. Once you've got that basic shape down, simply repeat it until you've filled the entire frame. Now that we have filled the frame with that shape, we're going to go back in and add a little bit of detail to each one of those circles. This is just an attempt to make each one of these look a little bit three-dimensional, like a sphere. I personally find that this particular pattern ends up looking like a bunch of cherries. And now we're going to finish this pattern by adding a little bit of hatching in the background, just to darken the background up and have a little bit of contrast. The first step for pattern number 2 is to simply make a little stem of some kind, and it can be curvy or bendy or wiggly, and make at the end of it a little teardrop shape. Repeat these little fronds until you have filled the space as much as you want to. The next pattern begins with long, skinny, curved ovals that go all the way from one side of your space to the other. And this simply breaks your space into a few little areas that we're going to make zigzag lines in. These zigzag lines go all the way from one oval to the next, or in the corner of the space, it covers from one edge of your shape to the oval. And we finish this pattern by adding some hatching to all of the triangles made by the zigzags that are pointing in one direction or the other. You choose which direction. The fourth pattern is a woven pattern. We start with 3 vertical lines, then 3 horizontal, vertical, horizontal, always 3 at a time, and we make that in a row that alternates. And then the next row below that will alternate the opposite way, and we keep going like this, like it's a checkerboard. But instead of black, white, we do vertical, horizontal, until we fill the whole space. The next pattern starts with a simple zigzag line all the way across. Then we make auras around that zigzag, both on the top and the bottom, until we fill the entire space. There are lots of ways to shade this, but the way I'm shading it is by putting a little groove into each corner of the zigzag on both the top and the bottom. For the sixth pattern, it's almost like making a maze. We start with a little bit of a loop that goes in towards the middle of our page, and then we want to stay just a little ways away from it, maybe 1/8 of an inch. And we want to keep filling the entire space with these loopy lines that fill just about 1/8 of an inch away from each other and about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the space. For the 7th pattern, we're going to start with a dot right near each corner but not quite on it. And we're going to use those 4 dots to make another square that's just at a little bit of a diagonal to the first. And then we're going to keep repeating that same process until we get all the way to the center. For the 8th pattern, we're going to start by making a bunch of blobs. Some of them can be circles, some of them can even have holes in them. And the second step will be to make a series of parallel lines in the background. And notice where there are holes in the blobs, the parallel lines are visible through those holes. Finally, we will shade in every other parallel stripe with black. And this shading here is optional, but it just helps to give a little bit of a three-dimensional pop, like those blobs have a shadow on the space beneath them. For pattern number 9, we make a series of evenly spaced dots. And then for the next row, we offset them so that the first is between 1 and 2 on the row above it. And we keep alternating rows and rows until we have filled the space. Then, as if we were making a wooden texture, we make curvy lines that wrap around the dots we've made in whatever way works. We just don't want any of them to touch each other. And we keep doing that until we have filled the entire space again. For pattern number 10, the first step is to draw a few spirals with the big Sharpie, and then fill the background space behind them, overlapping, with a whole bunch more spirals made using the fine point Sharpie. Pattern number 11 starts with a dot in the corner followed by some curved lines that get bigger, 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 smaller, 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 and end with a dot again. This almost makes a little wiggly worm-looking shape. And then we simply repeat this exact same concept in different sizes and in different curvatures until we have filled the entire space. And if you want to shade, I like to just shade along one edge of each of these wiggly worm shapes. That gives just a little bit of depth to the image. And for the final pattern, we're going to start with a big X from the diagonals of our square, and we're going to make a series of triangles, and that's all there is to it. Thank you for hanging out with me for these Zentangle videos. Maybe I'll do a couple more of these some other time. But I think this series should get you through the basics of being able to create your very own Zentangles whenever you want. Have a great day, and I hope you'll come back and join me sometime.